Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Amy and I create videos on absolutely everything coloured pencil related. And welcome also to our final real-time tutorial part of this leopard eye. Let's add the final touches and get this study finished. So we're going to move on to the next section. So we're going to switch back now and I'm actually going to work on this section down here. Going to work on this half, then we're going to finish off and work on this half there. Right, so we're going to add the colour and everything down to the bottom half of the eye now. So we're going to do exactly the same process as we've done before. We're just going to gently erase this graphite. So we're just going to gently run the eraser along the surface of your paper. Be careful not to push too hard. So I'm going to do this first half and then we're going to complete the other half. So I'm going to do it in two sections. So you want to get it so you can just about see the graphite. And then remember to use your drawing broom to brush away any erasings that come off of that. So for our base layer, what we're going to do is use our warm grey 1. So you remember to give it a nice sharpen, you want it nice and sharp. And then remember to look at your reference photo and note down the direction that that fur is going in. So underneath the eye here, it's coming across. You can generally see the way that the fur is going from the direction that the spots are as well. So you can see that the spots come this way, so the hair's overlapping the spots this way. So that's how we're going to add this pencil down. So you want to cover the entire area with a very light layer of the warm grey 1. So exactly the same process as what we was doing before. So when you get to this area here, this line that comes round, the fur sort of just comes down ever so slightly. So you just want to mimic that with your pencil strokes, so just shading down ever so slightly. And then when you come down to this bit, the last bit here, it sweeps around towards the left again. So you just want to add that down. Sweeping off to the left here. So just spend a little time looking at your reference photo. Just making sure that you've got all of those first strokes in the right place. So once you've got your base layer down, we're then going to go in with our cold grey 1. Again, make sure it's nice and sharp. And you're going to add this, like we did in the previous sections, in those colder looking areas. So the colder looking areas on this bit are mainly on the bottom here. And this section here where it's just underneath the eye. So what we're going to do is use this pencil in exactly the same way. You're going to try and avoid those dark spots with this pencil though, and you're just going to add this in those colder areas. So just observing your reference photo so you know where to add this. And then when you've done adding that, we're going to switch to our buff titanium and add this in those warmer areas, so the areas that we didn't add that cold grey. So these places are directly underneath the eye here. Again, you want to make sure that you avoid those darker areas. So make sure that you avoid adding this onto your black spots. Just add it around them. And in those warmer looking areas. There's not too many warm looking areas on this section. So I'm going to leave mine there. So now what you want to do is take your nougat pencil and you're going to start mapping out your dark spots. So we're going to start where we left off with this one here. So just gently shading in the shape. So again, just pay attention to your reference photo all the time. Make sure that you're mapping these in roughly the right area and shape. It doesn't matter if you don't get them 100%, just as long as you've got the spots sort of in the right kind of area. So don't beat yourself up too much if you don't get them exactly right or in exactly the right place according to the reference photo. As long as you've got the rough shape and a rough idea of where they are and where they're going, then that should be fine. So on the corner of the eye here there are some small spots, so we're just going to add these in with the nougat pencil. So again, just mimicking the shape that they're making. Making sure that you block them in. So once you get into the hang of mapping these bits in, it's going to become a lot easier. It's these smaller ones that become a little bit more difficult. When you get to this section here, it can sort of make your eyes go a little bit squiffy, where you're just looking at so many spots all the time. So just take your time with your spots and mapping them out, making sure you're getting them in the right shape, the right sort of size. So if you feel your pencil getting quite blunt, then just give it a little bit of a resharpen. Sharp pencil really helps here. So we're getting that slowly, just a couple more spots to fill in now. So you can see just how long I take to actually map everything in. And as I said previously, just taking that time to make sure that everything's in the right place and everything's the right shape will make it a whole lot easier for adding your darker colour pencils back over the top. It takes all of that worry out of getting it wrong as well. So if you go in lightly with a lighter colour pencil and then go over with your dark, you tend not to make so many mistakes that you might have made if you went in with a heavy pressure and a dark pencil. So that is everything mapped out on that bit. So now what I'm going to do is go over with a sharp dark sepia pencil. So you want to make sure you've got a nice freshly sharpened pencil for this. You also want to make sure that you sharpen up your nougat as well, because you're going to use this to blend everything as we go. So with your dark sepia pencil, you want to start to go over these nougat lines or nougat areas. So you apply the same technique as we have used previously, so make sure that you blend back into the fur where the white fur is overlapping the dark, and then where the dark is overlapping the light you want to blend the other way. Remember to blend with your nougat pencil if you need to as well. Get a few of those lighter brown marks blended out. So on these more goldeny areas, we're just going to add a few layers of the yellow and the burnt ochre. So take your light yellow ochre to begin with, and just shade where you've got these more goldeny tones on the fur. Then we're going to blend that out with the Caran d'Ache Luminance white pencil, or whatever white pencil that you're using. Just want to blend it lightly into the surrounding areas as well, so you get a nice transition as you come out of that coloured fur. And then where you've got some darker tones, so especially just underneath a couple of these spots here, just go over with an additional layer. So you can see you've got a nice yellow tone. We're going to blend that out with the white pencil. So you want to apply a little bit of pressure through the pencil just to burnish and blend that out. Then we're going to apply some Beaster and some burnt ochre over the top of that, just to give it a little bit more of an orange browny hue. You can add some fur lines with the Beaster pencil as well. Make it look nice and fluffy, nice and soft. And then continue adding your dark sepia over. And remember, you can add some of the Delft blue to your dark spots as well, just to try and give them a little bit more of depth. So it just makes a really nice colour just by adding a little bit of that bluey, sort of a bluey purple pencil, that one. So just continue this same process. So just alternate between your brown pencils and your dark sepia, just blend everything out, tone everything up where necessary. So it helps also if you was to take a little break from your work, stand back from it for a little while and view it from about 4 feet or so. So perhaps you could tape it to a wall or something and really stand back from it. Just have a little look at it and see if there's any areas that need improving, anything that needs darkening, anything that doesn't look right. You can also turn your piece upside down and do the same sort of thing. So when you turn something upside down, it alters the perspective and you can see your errors a lot clearer. So turn your piece upside down, see if it looks right, stand away from it, make sure that everything's in the right place. And just make sure that everything's looking nice and realistic, nice and blended, everything's looking nice and fluffy and not wiry or anything. You want a really nice transition between your spots and the rest of the fur. So you want to keep it nice and smooth looking, nice and fluffy. You don't want any weird lines anywhere, or like harsh lines where your spots end and your other fur begins. You don't really want to create that kind of effect, so you want to keep everything nice and smooth and blended. So just gently filling in all of your spotted areas. You can see everything looks really nice and fluffy. So I'm just going to colour in all of these spots with my dark sepia pencil and then blend everything out and add fur lines throughout the fur. So this part would get a little bit repetitive until I have filled up the black spots. So I'm just going to do this as quickly as I can, and you guys can just draw along as well, filling in all of your spotted areas. So remember to resharpen your pencil if you need to as well. So you'll see that this area, this white area where I've added the spots, looks quite unrealistic. It doesn't look fluffy, it doesn't look like fur, it just looks like I've got pencil down and it looks really flat. So this is why you need to add your fur strokes and blend everything out, because then it brings character to those areas that don't necessarily have a lot of fur detail or a lot of layers. You need to make sure that you blend everything out, blend it all together. So you can get a nice realistic looking fur. There's no good making your spots and everything look realistic if you're not going to spend any attention on your other patches of fur. So you can make your spots and everything look really fluffy and super detailed and super realistic, but it's not going to have the same effect as if you was to do that to the whole piece. So you need to make sure that you pay attention to absolutely every part of the fur and every part of the portrait and give it the same amount of attention and detail as you have to the other parts. So there's really not much left on this portrait anymore. It's just adding in all of these spots, which is the most time consuming part. So often when I'm near the end of a portrait I get quite like antsy about finishing. So if I was to get to this stage, you can see I've only got this real little section to do, and sometimes, especially in the past, I used to rush through it because I used to get so excited about finishing a piece. But that is quite detrimental to your work, so you want to make sure that you keep a steady pace throughout and try not to rush yourself to finish. Just keep a nice steady pace, and as I said at the beginning, everything seems to come together quite quickly. So just take your time, build your layers, build your colours. And more often than not anyway, the time flies and you come to the end of your piece and you sometimes wonder how on earth you got there so quickly. So last couple of dark patches now. Okay, so last few strokes. Okay, so now we're ready to add our golden gingery tones and blend everything out really nicely. So using your yellows, your Beaster and your burnt ochre, we're going to just add a few tones here and there. So if you squint at your reference picture, you can see where these golden tones sort of stand out at you. That's where we're going to add these colours. So just very lightly go in with your first colour of the light yellow ochre. Get a little layer of that going. And remember, if you're going too heavy with a colour, you can always knock it back by blending over with the white pencil. So don't panic too much if you've gone too yellow, just add some white over it, knock it back a little bit. So then we're going to go over with the burnt ochre, so just gently shading. It's these few areas here that have got a really dark golden gingery browny patch. Just there. And a little bit here as well. So we're going to use this burnt ochre pencil just to blend a few fur strokes out into the other patches of fur. So I want to make sure I've got a nice sharp pencil. I'm just going to gently use this pencil, create some fur strokes into these surrounding areas. So you can see that this area in the middle really still looks quite bland and uninteresting and unrealistic. So we're going to then add some Beaster, give it a nice browner tone. And then we're going to use this Beaster pencil just to blend some fur strokes into this area here. So some very light brown fur lines. Mainly want to add these coming off of the dark spots as well, to give everything a nice tone all over. You can see that as we're adding these Beaster strokes around these black areas, that everything's starting to blend together and this inner patch of fur is starting to look a little bit more realistic. This has got a very light spattering of the Beaster pencil around here. I'm going to use that white pencil in a minute to do a little bit of burnishing here and there. Then we're going to use the nougat to add a few more fur strokes where necessary, and then we're going to use the dark sepia pencil just to add a few darker fur strokes throughout the fur as well. So I'm going to use the white pencil just to tone down these yellow areas a little bit. So they were just a little bit too yellow for my liking, so just tone them down with the white pencil. And I'm just going to tone this bit down a little bit as well. I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going to use the nougat pencil to continue blending these spots out. So I'm just adding this over the darker areas of the spots. I'm going to go back over in a minute as well with the dark sepia pencil over some of the spots and the Delft blue. So mainly adding this coming off of these spotted areas. Trying to get nice smooth transitions. And then I'm going to switch to the dark sepia and we're going to add some of these darker fur lines throughout. So this is where everything will start to really blend together and you'll get some nice realistic looking fur now. So everything starts to look super duper furry. So we're going to add some fur lines, mainly through this colder grey section. Just darken up a few areas here as well. So you can see that we've completely transformed this middle section where it looked a little bit unrealistic, it looked a little bit flat, and now it looks really furry. And I'm really happy with how that's come along. So what I'm going to do now is actually use the Caran d'Ache white pencil just to add a few really white lines back over these darker sections. So we've got a nice sharp pencil. I'm just going to introduce a few white lines back over this dark spotty areas. That's just to help with the depth and look of the fur. So I want the fur to look really nice and soft, and you want to make it look nice and plush, like it's really deep, like you can sink your fingers into it. That's what we're doing with that white pencil. I'm just going to add a little bit of the Delft blue over a few of these spots where the darker ones pop out at me. This time I'm not going to work the dark sepia back over, I'm just going to leave them quite blue looking, especially in this colder section here. Okay, so now we've done that section, we're going to move straight on and do our last section, which is this small area, and this is where you've got a lot more of these gingery orangey tones. Right, so for this last part, we're going to do exactly the same, just erase ever so slightly these graphite lines so we can just about see them, just like so. And we're going to put our base layer down of the warm grey 1. So with this part, you've got a few fur direction changes here. So you can see that the fur comes down, continues this way for this part, but then it sort of comes out this way for the nose and then spirals back up. So what we're going to do is put down our base layer up to this point where we can see the end of these spots, and that's when it starts to change direction. So we're going to continue with this direction for now. So continue adding the fur in this manner. And then when we get to this bit, we're going to change the fur direction. So you're going to come from this direction and bring it round this way, and then bring it up as well. So you need to continue with the same shading motion. And you need to bring the fur so it eventually comes pretty much almost vertical. So you get a nice directional transition there. Like so. So that's our base layer down. So we're going to do the same as what we did earlier, and we're going to put down our cold grey 1 in this little patch here that we have, where we've got a little bit of cold toned fur just here. Just going to put that down there. And then we're going to use our buff titanium pencil, which I've got in my hand ready. We're going to add the buff titanium into the warmer areas, so that's pretty much the rest of the areas here. So remember to follow that fur direction. So follow the fur going this way, and remember to sort of avoid the larger spots. You've got a few smaller spots which are going to be quite hard to go around, so don't worry about going over those too much. It's just the larger spots that we want to try and avoid as much as possible. And remember to follow that fur direction as it changes. And then our base layers are pretty much done. So now what we want to do is follow the same practice as what we was doing earlier. So use a sharp nougat pencil just to map out some of these spots. There's not as many here, so that's going to make our life a lot easier. We're going to get through this pretty quickly, this last section. So get a nice sharp pencil and start to map in your spots here. So you've got a few small ones coming off of this section. So what I'm going to do for those is just use some very, very faint lines to indicate that they're there. And as I'm doing this, what I'm going to do is just introduce a few of these nougat pencil strokes into the fur around here. So again, you're taking your time planning out your markings. Taking your time making sure that you're blending everything as well. And then you've got some of these larger markings just down here. So you need to add those in the same way as what we was doing earlier. So exactly the same way. Excuse me. So just adding in these markings like this. And then just adding a few of these nougat fur lines and everything to just blend it into the surrounding areas. And then from this little tear duct area, that's where we're going to add a lot more smaller lines. So you want to add very, very tiny lines coming off of here. And this area blends into this splattering of spots just down here as well. So what we're going to do is use very, very, very tiny lines. You want to make them as small as possible, just real short ones, keeping the same lining technique as we was doing for the slightly longer lines though. You don't want to keep them all going in the same direction. You want them slightly curving, slightly overlapping. You don't want to group them and make them like these lines that we had here. You want to try and avoid doing this, but create this pattern. So we're also just going to finish off these spots as well. You'll notice that as I work I tend to jump from one section to the other, but you can work in whatever way that you feel is comfortable for you. This is most comfortable for me because I like to just jump to different areas just to keep the interest in the piece. I find that if I'm working on the same group of spots for too long, then I get slightly bored, and it's just the way that I work keeps me interested in the piece. But you can work however you want. So just work however you feel most comfortable. If you want to jump around different sections, then feel free to do that, but if you want to work on one section at a time and work solidly, then do that too. So at the moment I'm just sort of adding spots and lines to just suggest where certain areas are. So this section all comes down like this because this is where this like tear duct section of the leopard is meeting the spots. So I'm just continuing this down. And continuing to add these dark sections by just gently adding the nougat first. So almost done with the spots. So if you find that it is becoming a little bit tedious, as I said before, just make sure that you take a break, have a little look back at your work, see how far you've come. So to darken up these areas, I'm just going over the secondary layer of the nougat and just slightly increasing the pressure on my pencil. So now we've got an indication of where this darker section is. We've got all of these lines. So now what we need to do is go over these spots and darken them up. We've added in majority of the main ones there. I'm happy with the placement of them all. The only ones that we need to add are a few sort of darker sections just spotted out throughout the nose here. So this is where the nose is starting. This is where you've got all this fur direction change as well. So as the fur direction changes, you need to make sure that you change the way that you're adding in the spots. So we've been adding spots going this direction, so from here to here. So when you get to this part and it starts to curve up around here, that's when you need to change the direction of your pencil and change the direction that those spots are going in as well. So I'm going to take our dark sepia pencil and just flesh out all of these remaining spots. Then we're going to go in and start to layer down some of the mid-tone colours. So I'm going to start up here with these spots here. So as we do this, I'm just going to do exactly the same process as we did before, just dragging the pencil across the lighter areas as well, just try and create some fur texture throughout the rest of the piece. But mainly concentrating a lot of the darker marks and darker strokes on those spotted areas. So we're going to try and create a really nice furry texture. So remember to add the texture throughout the remaining parts of the fur as well. Blend everything out as you go. So just a few spots remaining now. The end is in sight for all of these spots. And then we just need to work on adding all of those lovely golden colours down, creating that nice colour of the leopard. So, making sure you blend everything out. And then once you've added all of your spots in, then we can really start to darken up a few of these areas. So the main sort of goldeny area that we've got is this section, and you've got this golden spattering through here. So we're going to start with our first colour, which is the light yellow ochre. You can also put down some buff titanium if you wish. So actually I'm going to start with the buff titanium. This is going to also help blend out a few of these spots as well, if we're just going to go into them slightly. So this just helps to start off that nice golden colour. Then we're going to add this yellow down. So make sure you look at your reference photo. Stop and reference it as much as you need. And just very, very lightly add this down. So you want minimal pressure. And when you're adding these colours down, you want to make sure that you do actually go over slightly on your spots. Just ever so slightly. And then we're going to concentrate a lot of this golden colour over in this corner here. Make sure that you blend it out lightly into the surrounding areas as well, and make sure that you follow your fur direction. So once you've got that one down, you can blend it out if you need to, or tone some things down with the white pencil. So I'm just going to burnish things out with the white pencil just to try and smooth everything together. And lighten the tone a little bit as well, make it a little bit less yellow. Then I'm going to go over with the burnt ochre, so this is our orange colour. I'm going to add this where you can see those orange tones peeking through. So there's a few orange tones here and there. So I'm just adding this in the same way as that yellow pencil, just going very, very lightly. Just shading back and forth. Just try and get a nice layering of colour down to begin with. Blend it into the other areas that we've done as well. So if you feel the need, again, you can blend out with your white pencil to get rid of some of those pencil marks. Can also increase the pressure on your white pencil just to blend out so you can get a few lighter areas of that tone. So I'm just doing that ever so slightly here. Just pushing a little bit harder onto my pencil. Then I'm going to go over with another layer of the burnt ochre, so increasing the orange tone here. So I need to get it to the same sort of colour as this bit here. So I'm just layering up until I get that similar colour, just applying this to where I can see that we have those orange tones. Also just adding a few strokes of it through the tear area of this as well. So now I'm going to switch to the Beaster, and this is where we're going to start to add a little bit more of a brown tone to this. So we're going to use exactly the same technique, just shading over. We're going to use our nougat pencil to create some first strokes in there, along with the dark sepia as well. So I'm going to add this to this little tiered up section as well. So you notice on the reference photo you've got this swirly whiter area there, and that's what we're trying to mimic here. So you want to keep your oranger colours away from where you've got those lighter areas on your reference photo. So I'm just going to use this Beaster pencil just to add a few fur lines coming off this way as well. Add a little bit of texture to this patch of fur. Tie all of the areas together as well. And then I'm going to introduce some more nougat pencil and also the dark sepia now. So I need to make sure that I've got sharp pencils once more. So give them a nice sharpen. And then we're just going to add texture with our fur lines, some quite dark ones. So if you feel the need to, you can increase the pressure on your pencil to try and get as much colour laid down as possible. So just adding our fur lines to where we can see those darker parts sitting. So you want to keep your fur lines quite short once more. And we're also going to add them to this little tear duct section as well. And we're going to add some dark sepia over this section as well in a second. I'm going to use this pencil to blend out these darker patches as well. So blend these dark patches that you can see here into your surrounding areas. If they're starting to look a little bit too much like blending in, then we're going to go over those dark sepia anyway, so don't worry about that too much. Just make sure that you blend them in nicely. You can always redarken sections. So we're going to get out the dark sepia. We're on to our final layers now. So we're going to use the dark sepia, make sure it's nice and sharp. So I just need to sharpen mine so we get a nice, really fine point. So with this, I'm going to go in and add some really tiny fur details here, and this will help darken up this section as well. So you want to keep these quite spaced apart and fairly small. You can increase the pressure on the pencil as well to get them really nice and dark. So you want to keep them quite far apart as well, because you want that mid-tones to show through. So you want to try and keep the mid-tones whilst building the darker colour. So space them a little further apart space them a lot further apart than how you would group your fur in these darker sections. So just make them a little bit looser. And then darken up these patches of fur, these dark spots. Darken those up a little bit more. You want to make your spots quite prominent while also trying to keep this area quite dark and sporadic. So you also want to turn your attention to some of the spots that are littered throughout this patch of fur as well. And there are a few sort of darker marks here. You just want to try and add in with your pencils. Make sure you've got a super sharp pencil once more. And try and darken this area, but just by adding a few dark sepia marks through there. And we're going to try and blend this area out now just by adding some fur lines into this lighter section, just to give it a little bit of detail and texture. Again, you want to pay attention to all of the areas and aspects of your drawing, not just the spots or not just a particular part of the fur. You want to try and include and make as much detail as possible in all of the areas. So if you find that your dark sepia is actually too dark for these areas, then just switch to the nougat. And just make the same sort of lines. And we're almost done. We're just going to fill in, blend out these areas. So just pay attention to your reference photos, see if there are any areas that need a little bit more attention. If you need to, come back in a couple days and then re-examine your piece. See what needs doing, see if there's any areas that you can improve on. So if you need to lighten any areas, so if you've gone a little bit too dark, then just pick out your white pencil and just burnish until everything's a little bit lighter and how you want it. So what you can also do is sharpen your white pencil and add those tiny white hairs over those dark spots. So get a really sharp pencil like this one. Add some white lines back over the top that just help with the depth, same as we did over here. And to darken up some of these spots, again, you can use your Delft blue just to add a little bit more interest and into the areas there. It really goes nice with the orange tones as well. So continue to play with your piece until you are completely happy with how it is. So a lot of people might have been tempted to go and pick out a darker brown pencil to create this area on the eye here, but we've actually managed to do it with just one brown pencil and a darker grey brown pencil. So I'm pretty happy with how that is. What I would usually do is like I said, leave it for a couple of days, come back to it and see if I need to make any adjustments, tone things here and there. So for instance, on this eyebrow bit here, I could add a little shading of the Delft blue to help indicate that those areas are quite cold. So I could just shade around the spots just ever so slightly with the Delft blue. Again, it just gives it a little extra layer of depth, gives it a little bit more interest, makes the whole piece a little bit more interesting. So just shading a few areas with the blue, in the cold areas mainly. Just helps to give it that little bit of an extra pop. So I'm pretty happy with that. We've completed our leopard's eye just using 12 coloured pencils, so these coloured pencils here, and I'm going to leave it here. Thank you for following along and watching this tutorial. If you have followed along and you've created your own leopard's eye, I would love to see how you've done, what you've created. So you can tag me on Instagram, you can join my Facebook group. With the PDF that accompanies this, I will link all of my social media, all of the groups that I own, and then you can post or follow along in there and show me what you've created, because I am always really interested with what you guys have created. So thanks for following this. I hope you found it useful. If you have any suggestions on other tutorials, then you can email me. That link is also on that PDF for you guys as well. And I will hopefully see you guys in another tutorial. Bye! I really hope that you guys have enjoyed working along with me in real time on this leopard eye tutorial. This has been my first real-time tutorial release to YouTube, and I have been so excited about releasing this to you guys. I would love to continue to do more of these for you guys on YouTube, and I would love to know if you would like to see more real-time tutorial series like this one. Let me know in the comments below what you would like to see and if you would like to see more. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram and Twitter with your finished eye studies. I absolutely love seeing the results from this particular tutorial, and I love seeing your guys' work, and I love following you guys and your progress as well. I'll be featuring some of these studies in upcoming videos, so make sure you keep those peepers peeled. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this real-time tutorial series. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already and you are new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. I upload new videos every single week, and I live stream most Sundays as well with some more live real-time drawings, so make sure you hit that sub button so you don't miss those. I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!